Well, we're COMP100 and it's week 3, lesson 3, and it's part 5, right? And what we're talking about before the break was we talked about object-oriented programming a little bit, and now we're going to go back and talk about our C# programming language for the last little bit. Okay, so where did this C# programming language come from? Well, it's a C-style language. And remember, we talked about way back in the day they came up with this language called C. Well, it came from there, right? It was, like it says here, an object-oriented and component-oriented language. It's part of this whole Microsoft Visual Studio suite of languages, right? What it does, the special thing it does is allow every piece of data to be treated as an object, right? And it's very similar to Java, if you've programmed in Java. And it was definitely modeled after C++. C++ was like C language on steroids, right? It kind of added additional functionality and made it more object-oriented, the C language, right? But it was more difficult. C++ uses other constructs called pointers and other things that made it very, very difficult to use. Although C++ is a very powerful language, it's a lower level language than C#. So again, we're talking different levels. C++ is closer to the machine level than C#. And C++ is used for game development a lot, right? Like for example, if you're going to create a 3D engine or something like that, C++, right? C#, more of an application level development area. So if we're going to develop an application for a bank, we're not going to do it in C++. Chances are it's going to be C# or Java. Chances are. So we talked about different pieces of our code. The class, this first class, which is our container, right? Which is right here. This first class. First class is called program, right? Now I can rename this to make it whatever I want. If you notice over here on the right, this program here, the actual file, and this program here is the same name. Now I can rename these things by right-clicking. Let's do that together. So I'm going to right-click on my program file, right? And I'm going to go rename. Okay? And if I want to change the name of my program, and I'm going to call it like, let's call it lesson 3. Right? It says, you are renaming a file. Would you also like to perform a rename in this project of all references to the code element program? And I say yes. Then all of a sudden, lesson 3, even though that's my file called lesson 3, guess what? My class now changes to lesson 3. So lesson 3 is the class. Now I can change this again. I can rename it. And what I just did is actually called something called refactoring. When I rename something with Visual Studio like this, I can't just click and just rename it. It'll mess things up. The best way to rename it is to right-click and use the Visual Studio to rename it for you. Even here with lesson 3, if I rename this thing to something else, right, I will mess things up if I did that. I'm not supposed to do that. Like I renamed it to blah, right? I'm just going to undo. I need to keep it the same. If I'm going to rename lesson 3, I got to right click and I'm going to go to refactor. I'm going to go rename. That's what I'm going to do when I rename stuff in Visual Studio. I can always rename my own stuff. I can always rename my hello string. All the things that I create, I can rename. But things that are part of my structure, my containers, like this namespace, I rename this namespace, I mess things up. Don't rename it by hand. Use your code to do it. Use your IDE. Same thing with this class. Don't do this by hand. Not right now. Not this main class. And even this main method, don't change the name of this method. Because once you change the name of this method, the program's not going to run anymore. Okay, so we got this string, but I want to kind of send a line of code to the console, right? Now the thing is with the console, it's going to open up and it's going to close down. That's what a console does. It's so fast, it'll go beep, beep. Watch, it'll do it right now. Let's take a look. If I run it, it goes beep, beep. Did you see it? console open up and close.
Pause, right?
In order for us to do it, we have to create a pause. And the first line of code we're going to learn to do that, to pause the console, let it hang there until we press a button, is going to create a new line of code. We're going to go console with a capital C. Let's do this together. And if you notice, my code ending comes up with console, right? And I press dot. What the dot does, right? The dot tells me it's the way I can access the console's methods. Console is the class, right, that I'm accessing, the object, right, with a capital C. And when I press the dot, this dot right here, right, it brings me a list of methods that I can do on the console, right, a bunch of them, right? So one of the methods we want to use is read key. So I'm going to start typing read. And as I type, Microsoft Visual Studio IntelliSense and code hinting comes up with some suggestions. And remember, I'm using a lowercase r, but it's suggesting uppercase r's, which is totally fine. Let's use read key. I'm going to double click on that. If that's not enough, I got to enclose this with parentheses. And I'm going to end off my line with a semicolon. Yes. What were you going to ask?
This is sort of like DB2 with schemas and classes.
Different than DB2, but I'm good that you know something like that. I don't know if you guys had DB2 together?
Well, I'm taking in my other class, that's why I know.
It's different.
Same this semester, like I just started it.
Great. But what we're doing here, just let's focus on C# for a second, right? C#, when we access objects like the console object, which is a built-in class, right? And I access the read key method, this read key method, which is, by the way, in Pascal case or upper camel case, I access it by using the dot. I chain my class and my method together with the dot, the period that I put between them, right? I can keep going, by the way. If I go read key dot, it gives me extra stuff, right? Now I don't need to do that, and it gives me extra methods that I don't need. I can keep chaining. It's called object chaining. I can keep going dot, 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 keep going down. I can choose equals, right? And then I can go dot. And I can go get hash code. I'm making this up, by the way. And I can go dot. And I keep going down, 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 down.
Different, like instructions, right?
There are different methods that I'm chaining together, but it doesn't make any sense for our context. So all we really need right now is this read key. What read key does is it listens for a key to be hit on the console. So now when I run it, like this, right, it pops up and stays there. It waits for me to hit a key, like this, any key, and then it goes off. So whenever we write code here together in our programs for programming 1, we need to put in the console.read key because we're making console applications, in order for us to see the console wait for us to do something, or to see the results of the console. Okay, that's the main thing we need to do. There's other ways of doing this too, but we're going to use this way. So console.read key is one method that belongs to the console class that we need to know how to use. The other method is the write line method. If I go console, again, before that, and I added a couple spaces there, dot write, I'm going to start calling, there's two different write methods. There's the write method and the write line method. Do you see that? The write method, I can write to a line in my console, but I won't go to the next line. I only write in that same line. If I put more than one write statement, it keeps writing in the same line, away again and again and again. If I go write line, I write to the line and then I go to the next line, almost like a return. So I want to use my write line, console.write line. I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to open my parentheses. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to put in a string, right? So I can say hello in lowercase. Follow me here. Hello in lowercase. Now I still got my string that says hello world, but I'm not going to use that right now. I just want to use console.writeLine hello, and my console.read key is going to wait for me to enter something. Now if I run it, I get hello. Now for you guys not to see this, I'm going to right click. I'm just going to change the properties of my console so you can see it better, okay? You don't have to do this. but I'm going to change my colors. I'm going to change my background color to white so you can see a little bit better, a little bit more contrast, right? And I'm going to change my font to Consolas and the size to 14. Oh, I don't like that. And the color of my font, right, to black. How about them apples? And even the Consolas, that size is too small, so I'm going to change my font size to like 20. There, see that now? So that's my console. I've just colored it and formatted it so it looks different, but it's the same as yours. If I stop debugging by pressing the stop button, my console goes away. So there's start debugging, and if I press the stop button, I can stop debugging, right? I can stop the code from running, right? I run the code by pressing play. I stop the code by pressing stop in Visual Studio. What am I doing here? Let's look at this output window. Let's take a look. I'm just going to make this output window really big for you. It says a bunch of stuff that's going on. The thread executed, it exited the code. It's giving me feedback saying that, hey, you've compiled and run this thing. On the bottom, this is blue line on the bottom, if you notice, right next to my, right next over here. You can't hardly see it, but it says ready, right? Bottom left corner of your screen should say ready, right next to, on top of your code here, right? It's hard for you to see, you can't see it. If you want to get up and look at it, you can. Right here, it says ready. If I can also go here on my command line, here go or my menu bar and go build. If I click build solution, right? Build solution, it doesn't really run. It runs the code and tests it, right? But it doesn't run it. It doesn't actually make it execute. It just tests to see if the code is okay. And it compiles the code. It's ready to be run, but it hasn't been run yet. Build actually does the compilation for me, and it does, but it doesn't run it yet. If I click this though, or I have other options here too, right? I can run the code, right? I can build the code with Shift F6 as an example, and I can also run the code, right? And if I can run the code, I can just press this button here. Here's my running the code. Okay, so a couple lines of code here, and if you notice, what we're doing is we're identifying the same thing. Now here's something. I'm using the system.console.writeLine in this thing, right? I just used the console.writeLine and it worked fine. But you can certainly do it the other way around. I could write system in front of it, right? I'm going to add system in front of the console. The reason why we add system is because we're saying, I want to access the namespace. Remember this container? Look at the namespace. We got a namespace. Our namespace is called COMP100 Lesson 3. It contains, it's a container, for our class it's called Lesson 3. And inside Lesson 3, there's a method called main. Well, similarly with console, the namespace is called system instead of COMP100 Lesson 3. And the class is called console. And my method is called writeLine or read key. You see? Same kind of thing. This is called object chaining again. But this is drilling down. So from a namespace into a class, from a class into a method, from a method into a parameter. All right? And so on. So these are instructions. These 3 lines of code here are instructions that are inside, that are nested inside my main method, which is this code block right here. This is my main method, right? They are executed or run, right? They're executed or run when I call my program, because my main method is accessed or triggered when I press this button. That's the first thing that's triggered, this main method. And every time I press this button, I can depend that my main method will run and print hello. This, where I'm showing the hello, is in the console. That's what it's called. It's not creating a user interface. It's not a true user interface. It's just an area that I can test my code. And that's what we're going to be doing here together. We're not going to really build a user interface. We're going to be building up our logic. We're going to understand how we can program. And so therefore, we really don't need a user interface. We need to understand the console. We need to understand how to make things together, very simple constructs right now. So again, I've used console.writeLine or system.console.writeLine, hello, and a read key to read from it. I'm waiting for a response. But maybe what I want to do before I read from it is give the user a message, right, that tells him that he should press any key to exit. So let's do this together. How would I write this? How would I write this message? I want output to the console just like I did my hello.
Start with console.
Console or system? Let's do system. So I go system dot. Now what do I do?
Console.
Console. Let's write this together. Here's my console. Dot. Now what command am I going to use?
You want it to write?
I want write will be on the same line. I want it to write line.
Right line, no, but like I was asking.
You got it? You're almost there.
No, I was asking you because technically, like I don't know how to do it yet, but
We can
we can
guess.
program it.
Yeah, we can guess.
So then, no, like we can write. I'm sure there's like a syntax, whatever, for us to write, so that like it's actually waiting for a key instead
This
of
is
just
it.
saying.
This is it. We're waiting for a key when we say read key. Read key does it. So inside my write line, I'm going to say I'm going to give a message to the user in the console that says press any key to exit. Right? This is a message that we're giving to the user. That's what's going to appear in the console. Hey, I want to add a space between my hello and my press any key. Well, if I want to do that, the console, this command, system.console.writeLine, by the way, I'm just doing it over and over again. I can also put an empty, nothing inside of it. This just gives me an enter, a return. That's all it does, right? It doesn't actually print anything on it. It just goes to the next line. Yeah.
Don't you have to close that line of code?
This one? Yeah, I do. Good for you. It gives me a semicolon that I need to put in there. It would have errored out anyway. That's called a syntax error. I didn't catch it, right? Now when I run it, what do we expect to see? Tell me what I'm going to see. What else? I need to get the hello first. The first thing, so we're going to run this. Let's run this one line by line. So first it's going to go to the string. I'm going to put this hello world into my string, but I'm not going to see any results from that. And that's why I got this little squiggly line under here. It doesn't do anything right now. I'm just storing a value, but I'm not doing anything with the value, right? My next line, line 16, in my code here, actually let me just take away this extra line here. Line 16 in my code says, hey, write the hello and add an enter character into my console. So hello is going to be the first thing that I see. Then there's going to be a space, next line, right? Then the next line is going to say press any key to exit, and then it's going to wait for me to press a key. These are all the commands that I'm giving the computer to do. And it's going to execute each of these commands in order from line 16, 17, 18, 19. It's going to keep going. It's going to go in that order. It's going to wait at line 19 for me until I press the button. Yeah.
You know what I was trying to say was like typing out press any key to exit. I thought that would literally just show the text. I didn't think that would actually like make a command.
It doesn't do a command. It's just a text. That's the message that I'm sending.
Oh,
the thing
yeah,
that does.
Right. It closes by itself.
Yeah. The thing that it's pulling in. The thing that's listening is the read key. That's a different kind of command. So there's two types of commands we're actually doing here. One is writing, and the other one is reading. Reading means I'm listening. I'm listening for a key press, right? Writing, write line, means I'm writing or printing to the console. Let's run this and see what happens.
Can you specify a read key?
Here, look. Yeah, we can.
To a specific key?
Yeah, I can, but we won't do it right now. Hello, press any key to exit. So it gives us a message, right? And look, the little cursor, this is what it's called. The cursor is flashing, waiting for us to enter something. If I press a key, any key, closes up. Why? because this condition has been satisfied. I've taken in a character, any key. I haven't done anything with it, but I've read it. And once it's done reading, just like it did before we had this thing, it opens and closes. The console will open and close until we tell it to stop. So again, example of that is, if I remove this command, I'm just going to delete it, right? And now I'm going to run it, and it's going to go boop boop. You see it though, it was there. It's still executed, right? Boop boop, but nothing. Until I have this command in, this command gets me to read from the console. Almost done. Then I'll let you guys go. So system.console.writeLine, we're good to go. And it's labeled here. Here's our class, here's our namespace, here's our method, writeLine, here's our argument. That's something you've never heard before, argument, right? And this is our literal string. Argument is almost like what we're going to send into the method, right? We're sending into the method this string, literal, that's called, that says this is my first C# program. A string, remember, is a series of characters that are linked together, anything between the quotation marks. That's a string, right? Pretty much. There's almost any character in there, right? We just made it so that it says something. It doesn't have to say anything. A string can be any kind of characters linked together. It's called a string literal because it literally is a bunch of characters put together. So this is the system.console. This is our first program we made. Okay? But I don't want this just to say hello, right? I want it to say hello world. But wait, we've defined a variable called hello string. Couldn't we pass, instead of passing the literal, this thing here that says hello, couldn't we send into the method this variable? Well, we can't. Let's put it in. Hello string. And if you notice as I type, because I've defined hello string up here, IntelliSense, Microsoft IntelliSense pulls it up right here. I'll show it to you up here. So if I start typing hello, look, it starts pulling it up and knows that this variable exists because I've defined it. I've declared it as a string and I've assigned a value to it up here. So if I start typing hello, I haven't finished typing it. Hello string, I'll type it again. Hello, oh there it is. If I press enter here, it enters the whole variable name, hello string. So what I'm saying here is line 1 now, or line 13, I'm taking hello world, this string literal, and attaching it or saving it inside this hello string memory location. The hello string memory location is something that I've named, I've given a friendly name to this random memory location that the computer's given me. Now I'm referencing this memory location. I'm saying, hey, I want to show me this string that I saved in this memory location called hello string on the console. I want you to take that string, and now I'm accessing that memory location, and it's returning the value of this memory location, which is hello world, and it's returning it and putting it inside the console. It's outputting it to the console. Yes?
When I typed it, it's still colored,
Green? Green or red? Okay, let's see. Let me run mine, see what it does. Hello world now, it says. Mine says hello world, right? So again, all I've done is I've taken hello string and I've changed this piece here, this writeLine statement, to hello string, as opposed to what I used to have, which is an actual literal that said hello. That's how it used to be. That's the string literal. That's a string that I put in there. It can accept a string, but it can also accept the variable that contains the string. So the variable is a substitute. When I use the variable name, I'm calling the value that's inside that memory location to come out. When I pass it into the method, I'm taking the hello string, and if I put it here, I'm passing this hello string into the method, and it becomes something called a parameter or an argument. This is the argument because it's the string literal, but I could simply put a variable in there as the argument as well, which is what we've done. So again, hello string, it takes the value of hello world, which you store in the memory location, which is a string, and outputs it to the console. That's what it does. How about if I want to enter some other characters on the console, like let's say some line of gobbledygook that separates my press any key to exit from my hello world, but it's not just a space. Well, I can simply do it like this: system.console.writeLine, and I'm going to enter some funny characters, right, like that. I can do that. Oops. And save it and run it, and now it looks like this. A little nicer. Right? Well, building on that code, why don't I just take this same string here, right, and put it before this thing to bound it up. There we go. Now print that up. Right? Hello world, press any key to exit. Rocket science? No. It's just executing each line of code one line at a time until it comes to read key. And read key, we know that this method waits for a key to be pressed. That's all it does. That's what the command does. Right? Each of these this line of code is executed and it does certain things. Now this is silly for me to do it up here. I could do this up here. I don't need to though. I'm just going to pull it, drag and drop it down here. I can do that with my code too. Even though it shows it's out of bounds, I can just tab in to reformat it so it's in line with my block. It doesn't do anything if it's out of bounds like that. It looks better this way. That's all it is. I'm just formatting my code. It doesn't do anything different. If I add spaces like this, I can add as many spaces as I want. Like watch. Shh. It's still going to run. Right? It's silly, right? I can't see the rest of my code, but if I run it, she runs. Right? Doesn't do anything different here. Right? And same thing as if I erase this code, right? If I erase all this extra space, the compiler ignores spaces like this. In fact, that's why we need a semicolon. The semicolon tells us when a command stops. So I start reading when I see something that's not a semicolon. Like if I'm the compiler, if I'm acting or simulating the compiler, and my eye is looking at the code, I'm going to keep reading the code until I see a semicolon. When I hit a semicolon, that ends that first command. What if I put two lines in the two commands on the same line like this? Then going with that, like this. Will it run? Sure it will, because the compiler doesn't care about space. Even that this looks ugly, if I run it, it still runs. The compiler only cares about the semicolon. This is one line of code, and this to this is another line of code. It doesn't care about the space. Now it's ugly for us, and it doesn't make any sense. Best practices, when we talk best practices, this is something in the real world that we be doing the right way. We never do that. We don't try not to put more than one line of code on a single line because it becomes unreadable. Not because it won't work. Doesn't mean just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. Okay? Same thing with this. When we declare variables, best practices says we should declare variables at the top of our code like this. We shouldn't mix it in. We shouldn't do a write line like I did, then declare some variables, then do some more stuff, then declare more variables, then do some more stuff, and declare more variables. All the variables, we try and declare them at the top of our method or the top of our class, and then we do all the stuff with them. And this happens in most cases, right? A couple more minutes and then we'll stop. So we talked about a lot of things today, right? The namespace, the dot accessor, which accesses different parts of our code, the class or the method, right? The method header, which is this. The method header is this piece. The header is the name of the method, which is main, and a couple of access modifiers, which we don't know anything about yet. Okay? And this is the method body or code block. I call it code block. So when I say code block, you know what it means. It's the stuff that goes between the braces.
This is exactly like HTML. like in the sense that there's a title header and then a body.
And all HTML and everything else came from C. Everything is C influenced. Everything you see, if you see a curly brace in a program, it comes from C. Right? So if you know C, you know what you're telling me right now? Hey, I speak Latin, Tom, but I speak Latin, but you're speaking Italian and I understand. Right? Or I speak Italian and you're speaking Portuguese and I understand a couple words because they're almost the same. They come from the same root language, Latin. And I'm happy. I'm happy about that. Let's go back. So we talked about this. We talked about white space. I'm going to talk about the axis modifier next week, right? And I'm going to stop here. All right? That's enough. That's more than enough for today. We've done 25 slides out of 52 for lesson 1. I know we're in lesson 3. We have a lot of stuff to cover. But we also did, hey, what's Visual Studio? Let's put up our first project, right? Let's handle GitHub for the first time. That's where I'm going to handle my code. And by the way, speaking of GitHub, this is a great place to stop for me. So I'm going to go into Team Explorer. I don't have to do this. I'm going to go into my changes, and I'm going to say, no untracked files, hopefully. And in my changes, I'm going to say, created my first Hello World program. Right? And press commit. I'm going to go save everything. I'm going to go back out here, go to unsync commits and sync. And now when you go up into GitHub and I refresh, right, then you have my latest lesson 3 files with all that stuff. Okay, so that way you don't miss anything. You haven't missed anything that I've done. So if you don't know what to do, or if you error it out somewhere, you can always download my files and check them out and see what I did differently. What, GitHub? Yeah, that's why I'm showing you how to do it. We're going to do it next week. One step at a time. Oh yeah, we're going to learn how to walk before we fly, buddy. Right? All right, so again, we've learned all these things. And next week when we get back, I want you to read. If you don't have the book, I want you to read through the rest of these slides. And I also want you to read through or skim through, even if you don't understand, right? Lesson number 2. I've given you both lessons because we got to catch up. Next week, I'll be giving you your first assignment, which will be a very basic assignment, okay? And it'll be due the week after. Every assignment will be due the week after, the week after, the week after. And probably the week after that, if we cover most of the stuff that I want to by next week, whether it's the week after when your assignment's due or the week after that, we'll have our first test. It'll be a test that I've given you some of the questions for already, and that I will continue to give questions to you about. So when we get together again next week at 6:30, be prepared. I'm going to ask you some questions. Hopefully you'll know the answers. If you don't, it's okay. And that's it for me for this week.